Today's story was written by Reddit user Redundantfridge. Somewhere on an unremarkable planet, in a faraway city most people forgot existed, two nobodies treaded the dark streets together. One was a drunken, depressed mess of an alien, a being so utterly decimated by alcoholism, the being would not be recognizable by anyone from his own species. The other was a human that embodied being generic, a person so painfully average that no one could truly remember him even if they tried. Currently the human was giving his shoulder to his companion through the dishevelled, lonely concrete paths. While in transit back to the alien's home, a hooded figure came out of the alleyway, then eyed the two men. Hands deep in his pockets and determining whether or not these two will be his next victims, one moment the thief believed tonight would be a decent payday. Almost immediately, he felt something was awry. Some may cross the street to avoid him, others may reach into their own pockets, either feigning being strapped or bluffing. At least they would acknowledge him with a glance. This human did not do any of that. He did not stop his pace, nor expressed any acknowledgement that the thief existed before him. To him, this was not someone wistfully dense to their surroundings. He hesitated. Thoughts began to shoot across his mind, like the spacecraft across the night sky. Wait, that human, he looks familiar. Either by the poor lighting of the street lamps or the moonlight, the human's features twisted inside of the vagrant skull. Memories of random articles on the galactic web, the sheer amount of news reports that he had seen in passing, the imagery of a man that stood high like an ancient hero on the battlefield. When the two men began to cross his line of sight, something finally clicked, like a tripwire being set off. Is that Fitor Mustafi? Here, out of all people, I run into the hammer of God? All the possibilities cracked through his neurons. Whether action or reaction, all he understood was death upon him. He internally hoped and prayed that mercy would be handed down, with a bare minimum a loss of consciousness. The alien slowly removed his hands from his pockets and placed them against his chest, with palms facing out. He couldn't breathe, nor move. All facets of his being were paralysed at an existential level. The human did not acknowledge the thief, and his companion was too far gone to notice. Only when they were far from sight did the thief relax. Even with the cold air, the sweat that came from him refused to stop. His heart attempted to jump from his chest. The man returned to the shadows to warn the rest of his group. The human remained with his friend in his dishevelled home. To say it was a pigsty would be describing it mildly. While the alien was left to vomit and defecate in the bathtub, the human donned his PPE, then began to clean up the unfathomably messy apartment. During his near impossible mission to spruce up the home, the sounds of conflict reached his ears. Above him, doors were being slammed, countless objects being thrown, stomping, yelling. He was content with just ignoring it if the noise had not exceeded an hour. With a sigh and cough, the human dropped his PPE and went to visit the upstairs neighbour. Seeing the exterior, it was clear that whatever activities transpire here all relate to drugs. He knocked on the door, then awaited a response. The sound of a lumbering giant approached the door. Without any grace, the entrance was almost broken open. Appearing before the human was a hulking beast of a furry alien that was disrobed and distastefully exposed to the elements. Even before the first words were traded, the bruises and cuts across his body informed the human of everything. Despite the inappropriate scene mere centimetres from his body, the man maintained a professional demeanour. "What do you want, tiny human?" His voice almost made the foundation of the apartment complex scream in agony, yet the unremarkable human stood his ground. There was no confidence nor foolish bravado. He merely existed. Nothing more, nothing less. "Can you quiet down, please? I am trying to clean in peace." The pace and tone of his was steady, almost bored. The human glanced past the alien's torso and observed the hurricane of destruction the apartment had suffered from. Somehow, even with reinforced walls, someone's legs were clipping out of one of them. Another alien, one resembling a praying mantis, appeared to be incredibly high while being stuck in a chair. The mantis spotted the human. Within mere milliseconds, the insect's mental faculties returned to him. "Yagel, shut the door! Shut the door! Human, give us a minute." The massive alien slammed the door in the human's face and lumbered towards the insect alien. "Why did you stop me, Bevso?" The mantis raised an arm. "Brother, I know what you were about to do. If you laid a hand on that man, all of our asses would have been obliterated, even yours." Yagel grasped the chair, then shattered it into pieces through pure brute force. "Explain further." Bevso cleared the fragments all over his body. His eyes kept darting between the larger alien and the door. That man is Volta Hardina, the exterminator. He's the real deal." "I know nothing of him. He is only one man, flesh and blood. Everything and anything dies. This one is no exception." "Wait, no, please. I sobered up the moment I saw him. Think about it. What did you see in that man's eyes?" For once, the brute paused. His two last brain cells rubbed against each other. The fancy meat computer in his thick skull kicked itself alive for one last purpose. Nothing. Even the giant had shrunk in silence. Yeah, see? The mantis raised both his arms. "Those are the eyes of a man who has survived history. Apologize to him, please, before we get sent to the great Otheka above." Yagel looked at the door. His once lumbering steps weakened as he approached the entrance to possible hell. Opening the door slowly, the giant alien looked down at the human. "We're sorry, Mr. Human. We had an argument. There will be no more trouble." The human stood there silently. Sounds of the nightlife and nocturnal creatures were the only things to fill the void. Without any further comments, he walked away from the alien, then headed down. Yagel slowly shut the door, then locked it. He turned to his companion. "Call everyone." Morning finally came, and the human's companion was recovering from a hangover. The apartment was in pristine condition. Even the alien's clothing was purged of regret and mania. Yet that did not prevent the alien from drowning in his mistakes. The translator could not keep up with his ramblings, or maybe the machine learner decided to give up on him. In spite of that, for the words that did come through, they followed the same line of thought. Money. They stole it all. Without a word from the human, he proceeded to visit the nearest debt collection agency. Almost immediately, while in the office of one of their representatives, two of their armed thugs waited outside the door as a human was in a meeting. While the collector was sitting among his wall of files, the human decided to remain standing. "That man is in an outstanding amount of debt. This isn't even an issue of us being predatory. That guy really is that bad at managing finances." His tone was pristine and measured. The human's eyes blankly caressed all the details of the office. "Inform me of this. What is your full name?" The collector stared at him dubiously. "Ryan Grotto. I don't see how—" "Company name?" "Burek? No, not the name of your collection agency. The lender you are representing. Who is it?" The collector paused. His heart beat heavily, yet he professionally hid his fear. "Navio Rami Credit Union." "What is their address?" While the two were in a back and forth discussion, the thugs outside began speaking quietly. Does that human look familiar to you? The taller reptilian questioned his smaller furry co-worker. No. Wait. Actually, yeah, he does. While the reptilian deeply thought about the details of the human's appearance, his friend immediately spit out, Wait, is that Colurso Ignanamorte? The reptilian's careful analysis got invaded by the cognitive bias, less of his appearance and more focus on how the human carried himself, served to infect his perception of the subject. Oh no, it's him. Yes, that's the Death Hunter. The very alien began to tremble in place. Mistakes were made. I don't think we can jump the Death Hunter. Not us. I don't think we have enough bodies to throw at him. The reptilian raised his fist and banged on the door rhythmically. The representative excused himself, leaving the office to speak to the guards. What is it? An annoyed expression was plastered across his face. Sir, I think we're making a mistake, the reptilian answered. How so? That man's Colurso Ignanamorte, the smaller alien exclaimed. The collector stared down the furry creature incredulously. That isn't Cal. You guys are dumb. I surfed with that Italian during the siege of Richa. Just because that man looks similar doesn't mean it is the same person. Now do your job. Venomous disdain leaked through his teeth. Before the two guards could retort, the collector returned back to his office. He took a seat and stared up at the lookalike. While doing so, he imagined a side-by-side comparison between Cal and this particular human. The resemblance was uncanny. Only minute differences in mannerisms separated the two men, as well as the light in their eyes. Cal had the void in his eyes. This pair is empty, yet close to the man who cheated death. What kind of person could almost reach the peak of someone who buried his entire family and survived a last stand? The silence between the two men grew like a great rift in space. A black hole of pressure began to weigh on the collector. Damn those two, I can't get his face out of my head. The alien coughed to clear his throat, yet a lump began to grow inside his esophagus. Sweat ran down his brow, and his spine began to send all his nerves into a frenzy. All he could see is what Cal did. Everything he knew about that man got superimposed onto the anomaly standing in his office. Every worst-case scenario, tens to hundreds to thousands of possible actions he could take, kept being turned into fruitless endeavours. Despite the harrowing stillness, the human was content to stand there and witness the collector deteriorate to his own imagination. He has to be someone famous. He has to. I heard the Hammer of God is making his rounds. So is the Exterminator. Surely he's part of that hell squad. The collector attempted to steady his eyes, but was only met with blurred vision that slowly became worse. At the end of it, the collector slammed his head against his desk. Only then did his body finally relearn how to breathe. Without lifting his head from his position, the alien pointed a finger at a nearby cabinet. Code is 427224. Just take whatever you need and go away. The human did as requested. Without speaking a word, he recovered the exact amount of money lost, then exited without further issue. While the collector recovered from his mental anguish, the two guards stepped in. Sir, we have a slight issue, the reptilian guard reported. What is it this time? The collector slowly raised his head to meet the other alien's gaze. The boys heard us all call that human by his full name. Word spread fast, and now our boss man is telling us to evacuate. The collector shut his eyes and took in a deep, long breath. Of course. The human laid out the stack of currency in front of the recovering alcoholic. He was sitting in front of the television with a large bottle of water and a depressing breakfast within reach. His once haggard eyes exploded with life as he grasped the credits between his fingers. Tears welled up in his eyes, his entire body fell apart from relief. He could barely raise his head at the human. Oh, thank you, I can't." The unfortunate soul attempted to speak past the tirade of emotions collapsing upon him. For once, instead of drowning in sorrows, it was elated happiness. "I know," the human blankly commented. "You were an interesting individual to communicate with in the bar. What I did was to return the favour, and because I had nothing else better to do." The human casually sat next to the alien and stared at the screen, which was reporting on the sudden disappearance of certain criminal elements. "Return the favour?" The smelly man glanced at his new friend in bewilderment. "What did I do?" The light of the television got lost within the emptiness of the human's eyes. "What we spoke about will remain a secret lost in debauchery and alcoholism. Besides, you have not uttered my name yet. Do you remember?" The other man stared into the distance. Brain fog and static is the only thing that occupied his mind. "I'm sorry, I really don't." The human shrugged. "It's fine, even without being held down by copious amounts of drink. People have a hard time understanding my name. It's Jacinto Medante. I'm a cleaner by trade. It's pleasant to meet you again, Aberdeen." "Same here." The two men chilled on the couch, just watching the news fly by, while listening in on rumours and reports on special humans arriving in town. Aberdeen's mind processed a realisation. "Hey, Jacinto, if you don't mind me asking, as a person, who are you?" For once, the human mulled on the question. After a few additional seconds of deliberation, his final answer became, "No one in particular."